Welcome to this episode on All Things LOCS, where we discover everything related to leadership, operation, culture, and strategy. I have a treat for you guys today. We have CEO of Vegas Remodels, Ryan Cave. He was best in Las Vegas, a general contractor. Really excited to have him. Great friend. And dude, there's so many things I want to jump into today. But first, maybe it's the best place to start is tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and a little bit about Vegas Remodels.
Yeah, thank you. So born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have family that are from the trades. My dad was in the carpentry trade. My uncle was in the carpentry trade. When I was like 12, I used to roof houses with a local roofing company out here.
12?
Yeah, 12 years old, dude. Yeah.
Did they think you were 18?
No, it was actually my friend's dad who owned the company and needed some extra help. And I was like, I like doing it. So.
Yeah.
Grew up building stuff, built sheds in my backyard. My dad was really hands-on, kind of in the trades aspect of things, always building something in the garage. So kind of grew up that way. Went to college, didn't go down the construction path.
Ohio State. Was it Oregon?
Different O.
Yeah.
Oregon. They went ahead and, I went to college, tried to find a different career path, but all roads came back to construction. So about 6 years ago now, I stopped doing what I was doing for Apple, and I started a construction company.
And what's been that journey ever since? Because it seems like as soon as you started it, it's just been like growing and growing and growing, working with like not just, just the good old folks here in Las Vegas, but also like high profile clients.
Yeah.
What's that journey been like as far as like getting your feet wet? You've been in the trades a little bit with your family, and then now I started a business, and then it's like, oh my God, it's growing, it's growing, it's growing. What do I do?
Yeah. So,
You're getting flashbacks.
A little PTSD. College prepares you quite a bit for the first early days of business. And college is kind of an overarching broad spectrum of business, right? It doesn't really get into the meat and potatoes of it. So it helped me kind of run this thing for, I'd say, probably 2.5 years clean by myself. And then I really needed some help. So, I started out with a 2014 F-150 with all the tools loaded in the bed of the truck.
Yep.
I worked as a carpenter at that time. I was not a general contractor. I worked as a carpenter, so I was a single trade. And then the general contractor who hired me as a subcontractor, and I was doing all of his carpentry work. So that happened in July of 2019. Was like my first ever carpentry job on my own. And I remember getting my first $3,000 check, and I was like, "Oh my God,
I'm baller!"
Yeah, this is amazing, right? Because he went ahead and supplied everything. I was just the laborer. So I realized very quickly, carpentry was pretty much my bread and butter because that's what I grew up in. I didn't know everything, but I was constantly learning, constantly evolving. Especially in this field, everything kind of there's so many different products coming out every single day. So many different applications to those products are coming out every single day. So even what you knew yesterday doesn't apply to today.
So you always got to be on top of it. So it's one thing being a carpenter and they're feeding you this is the material, this is the thing that we're using.
Yeah.
This is the way of using the new material. It's a little bit different, might be more brittle, whatever it is. But now you as an owner, you're kind of on that forefront, aren't you? So how is that being on top of new materials and then new vendors that are coming out, so on and so forth, so you have the best products for the clients?
Yeah, so being back in the trades, actually physically getting my hands dirty back then, the way that you grew up learning how to put cabinets in, for example. And then there's a tool that helps you put the cabinets in faster. But the cool part
this
about
is magic.
Dude,
sorcery right here.
A certain type of clamping system keeps the cabinet perfectly level while you screw it in, versus you're holding it with your hand and screwing it in, right? And then they're using levels and squares and all that stuff to make sure it's really true.
Yep.
Whereas the tools that have come out to help you facilitate that are just extraordinary. But now being on the owner aspect of things, it's changed, right? Now being a GC, I don't actually go and find my own work, more or less. We have an Instagram, we have, kind of a following and stuff like that, but I don't actually go out there and pursue. What I do now actually is I partner with designers, and that's probably been my favorite thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
The reason being is because I just like to build stuff.
Yeah.
And these designers come up with crazy cool things that we get to build all the time. which leads into the high profile clients, which leads into like not even high profile client themselves, but just a higher end job finish that's required to accomplish a certain task, right?
So you're saying that like because this is interesting because this is like in any industry too, like just because the job might have more zeros attached to it, you're saying that, hey, the way that we approach it is still, it's still the same, like quality's still the same, the way that we treat them is the same.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe other folks, they might change that for whatever reason. Have you seen some of that in your world?
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, yes. The construction as a whole industry kind of has this negative stigmatism to it, right?
Yeah.
Where contractors are more or less trying to get the biggest bang out of their buck. They don't come when they want to, they don't show up when they say they're going to show up. They don't do the things that they say they're going to do. I try to fix that, right? That's a huge problem, and I try to fix that, right? So you'll see that I try my hardest to save everybody as much money as physically possible and give them the dream that they want. But I also try to have communication, right? I have my guys sending follow-up Fridays every day or every Friday to recap like what happened this week, what's going to happen next week, things that we're waiting on, any issues that we encountered. So that way the client's always informed. We talk to the client every day. Depending on their communication, right? Some of them go to work, some of them, have things to do, right? It's their lives. They're trusting us to take care of it. So we try our hardest to kind of communicate with the clients as much as physically possible throughout the process and show up when we say we're going to show up and do what we say we're going to do. But at the end of the day, they're just people, right?
Yeah.
Every single person that we work with is just like you and me. The difference is some of them have bigger paying jobs, right? That's the only difference here. They may have a celebrity status attached to them, but they're still people at the end of the day, and they
still care about their home. They
it's
get
a
it
home.
done right. Yeah,
it's not just a job; it's a home.
Right.
That's the biggest thing in this industry that you got to think about is like, it's not just a job. It's not just like I'm doing a master bathroom and I'm out of there. It's like, dude, this person is.
I'm going to take dumps in here.
Yeah, somebody's going to use this bathroom
Yeah.
for years and generations possibly before they have to remodel it again before it becomes outdated. So, their kids are going to grow up in this house. They're going to have Easter. They're going to have Thanksgiving. They're going to have Christmas in this house. So you want a finished product that will last. So like turning your thought process that direction rather than it being a job and they're high profile clients, they're just people and we're building their home.
So it sounds like you're taking ownership of that. Like if I was working on my own house, I would want quality. I would want integrity. I'd want it to be done right.
Yeah.
Because it's going to last me for decades.
Yeah. I mean, just pretend you didn't even know whose house it was or how much it cost, right? Just take those two aspects out. Take the money out of it, take the person out of it. It's still a home at the end of the day, and it's still a person that you're working for. And you're trying to accomplish that goal. But yeah, I mean, the higher the paying job does not necessarily mean the higher the net profit. It just means a lot more stuff is going on, and that's typically what it comes to. We don't typically seek the higher paying jobs. They come to us because we're pretty much one of the people in this town that can facilitate it and handle it and keep the quality standard where it needs to be at that level.
So I find that really interesting in the sense of, like, I don't know, I get really pissed honestly when like businesses they'll get like a high end client. It's like, all right, treat this person like a VIP, and then it's like, but everybody else just treat like kind of basic. And I'm like, dude, that's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you should be treating every customer or every patient if you're in healthcare as a VIP person. But I want to go back just for a second because you said something really interesting in the sense of how do you stay ahead, because things are changing so rapidly in construction and trends and like new stuff coming out. So how do you stay ahead of things so you're not putting products in that are outdated and you're able to stay ahead of the competition that way? Because I do find in business that's just an aspect where people just want to stay so focused on just what we're doing right now, and then before you know, it's like our shit's outdated. How do we stay ahead of it while still focusing on what we have to do right now?
Yeah, so a lot of that comes from conferences, magazines, email threads, websites, and stuff like that, right? And that's where the designers come into play, right? When the designers go ahead and ask us to build, I'm just going to give a rough example, a bar, right? They want a curved bar with a curved rail with certain feet on the bar rail, on the bottom, where you put your foot pegs on, and they want this certain tile and the certain stone wrapped around it with LEDs and all that stuff. somebody has to figure that out and come up with it, right? The designers give us a vision, and as a contractor, it's our job to create the vision, right? So this is where the collaboration effort of not just 1, 2, 3 people, this is like 7 to 10 people on just a literal bar come together, right? So before we build anything, we get, you know, the carpenters involved, we get the concrete guys involved, because now we need to anchor this bar, which is an island, to the ground, so that way nobody tips it over. You know, they got kids, right? We don't want a kid running into this in the bar.
Or they're like 9 margaritas in, and
yeah,
things happen,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's a bar, right?
It's a bar, right?
So yeah,
you gotta drill this thing to the ground.
Yeah, we want to bolt it to the ground.
Yeah,
So
very
it's there
smart.
forever,
Yeah.
right? But then you got to add like the extra features in it, right? So you have the cabinet guys, you have the carpenters who build the bar, you have the countertop manufacturers who go ahead and facilitate the edge of the bar, right? A curved edge is a lot more difficult than just a square mitered edge, right?
Right.
You have the tile guys and how that's going to look. You have the railing guys to get a perfect bend that matches that curve, and then all of it, right? So it's a huge collaboration effort. And when you got 7 or 8 or 9 people putting their heads together, and each one of them is the expert in their own industry, we can all figure something out. And most of the time, it takes a little bit of time to do some research, right?
Right.
Like we research what the best way to bend this pipe is to get it to exactly where we need to go. We do the research on what type of tile do we need to put on this curved wall, right? You can't put a big square tile around a curve. It doesn't curve, right?
Yeah.
So what type of backing we use, what type of product we use to adhere the tile to the backing on a curved surface, right? So all of those things, every aspect of every job takes not just the people to build it, but it takes the collaboration effort of everybody involved in that one specific thing and research to make sure we're building the best product.
So that kind of leads to, I guess, like the art of a collaboration, because you mentioned, you know, designers being your people in the field in other ways. So you're educating yourself, but the designers are also educating themselves on new things, new products, and then it's that meeting of the minds. How do you, if you can share some strategies on how you ensure that like your team is aligned not only with them from a collaborative perspective, communication, but also even, because you talked about like, you know, integrity and quality, that they're also doing the right thing?
Well, it comes down to keeping every single person accountable for their stuff, right? And I think that's why I've tried to grow, right? And growth, when you grow, you have more problems, right? And when you have more problems, it's more fires to put out and things that you don't need. So sticking to your tried and true people, right? The people that you've built relationships with, which are your core designers, your core contractor, your subcontractor base, your core manufacturers, your core supply houses. If you can keep, you know, build a network of those types of people, then it makes the collaboration very easy. But keeping them responsible for their portion of the job. So, you know, if we go up to the designer who picks a slab, right? Let's go back to the bar, right? The curved bar. And let's say the designers pick a slab and it has a lot of veins in it, hypothetically. And the design aspect is to make sure that that vein water falls over the edge. But on a curved countertop, it's a lot more difficult to achieve that. So we might have to reselect. We just go back to the designers and say, hey, look, with this type of design that we have with this type of slab, that may not be the best thing to fit your aesthetic. We should try to find something like this. Or the tile, right? Let's say they pick a tile and they don't think about it. So there's a lot of reliability on the designers to rely on us as the contractors, not just me, but all the collaborative efforts of the trades to ensure that like we're doing exactly what they want and they're kept in the loop about like, hey, this will work, this won't. So sometimes that does mean reselections, and sometimes that does mean that, you know, maybe a quick design change to make it happen. So does that answer that question?
Yeah, 100%.
So with, you know, having that many people involved in even just a project like you just described, how do you keep, I guess, everybody, you mentioned responsibilities, how do you keep everybody accountable? And then how do you, you know, I can imagine, especially just in that environment where there's some egos, right? Maybe some people think that they know things a little bit better or my idea is better. How do you actually manage that? And I don't want to say keep it in check, but how do you manage egos of individuals just to get them on the same page as working on a team and focus on the client that you're working on?
So, yeah. So in construction, there's tons of egos, right? That's why it's kind of difficult to be the new guy. You know what I mean? Or the
I've been doing this for 20 years, you little whippersnapper.
Yeah, you got the old
You're right.
65-year-old electrician who's been doing this for years and years, and all he likes is electrical, fishing, and hunting.
Yeah.
Right? Not talking to people, you could see. I did not mention, right? So really it goes back into a whole culture thing, right? If you build a culture within your business that essentially says like, hey, we don't care whose house this is. We don't care how much money they have. We don't care what the dollar amount of the contract is. At the end of the day, we're here to build a home the way that the designers want us to build it, right? And getting everybody rallied around that idea is not actually as difficult as it sounds, right? If you bring everybody in and you say, hey, here's the vision, here's how we're going to do it, and here's the best part. We rely on our subcontractors in certain aspects because they stay up on their own industry standards, right? Mm-hmm. For example, the tile guy might have a new way of doing tile that was just, called Ditra or the Schluter system.
What a name, Schluter system.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
It's not that new of a system, but it's a relatively new versus the olden days of doing tile, right? It's an anti-crack membrane that they put down, but that's a newer system. So now we're putting that in houses. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's anti-crack, right? It's the newer, most modern, updated thing. And if it weren't for our tile guys, then we wouldn't know about that system unless we went to a convention, which are once a year or twice a year, right? Yeah. So unless we find out through those types of things, then we wouldn't know. So we rely heavily on our subcontractors to kind of tell us like, hey, like, I know you want to do this idea this way, but I think that it would be a better idea to do it this way, and here's why. And then so we listen to our subs, right? Because they're the expert in their field. Like although we're general contractors, we know a lot about everything, but we don't know everything about everything. Right. Right? And everything changes.
So it's like generalized versus specialized.
Bingo.
And making sure those channels are open of like, this is the ultimate vision. This is what we're trying to complete here. And keeping that channel open where it's like, if there's some adjustments that we can make to simplify it, get it done faster, expand on margin or like not lose margin or whatever it is, it's having that open channel with them.
Yeah. And so it's like where the architect will draw or the designer will draw a certain thing, right? Let's just say they want the wiring in the wall here to do under cabinet lights or something so easy as that. They're going to be able to help us figure out the best way to accomplish our goal in the nicest, cleanest possible way. And sometimes our ideas align and we're like, yep, that's exactly what we were thinking. Let's get it done. Or there's a dialogue, right? There's a dialogue and they're just like, hey, what about up here? Because then that avoids this, this, and this. And I'm like, dude, that's a great idea. Or if it's a bad idea, we just talk to them like, hey, because a lot of these specialized trades, and you'll find this a lot in construction, thinking about the next guy is sometimes not even a thought process to them. So, for example, the electricians may not think about the drywall guy. They'll just go up with a hammer and start hitting holes in the ceiling just to fish their wire through. But that makes the drywaller's life a living nightmare, right? So now we teach our electricians, hey, let's square off all of our holes and let's make it a nice clean cut so that the drywaller, the next guy, has an easier time, right? It takes an extra 10 seconds of your time and it makes his life a little bit easier. And overall, we're thinking about the project's success.
Right.
Yeah, so I love, you said like some really phenomenal things there that I just want to kind of hit on for a quick second. So, and this is really, I find that this is a very important aspect for entrepreneurs or just business owners in general. You hire somebody and then they know better than you, but then you want to micromanage the shit out of them, right? So it's like, I hired this expert, but then I'm going to tell them exactly what to do because they're just a control freak. And they want to micromanage. And then there's the aspect too that you talked about. Are we aligned on our vision and are we aligned on our goals? And that's another aspect in business that you don't find too often. It's just, hey, I have a goal, but then I don't tell the employees and then they do their own thing. And then I get pissed off as the business owner as to why we're not hitting our targets. But then this last thing that you mentioned too about how is what you're doing affecting somebody else, right? And how do you actually, I'm just curious to know, especially when it relates to the culture, how do you impart that? And at what point when you hire somebody, do you actually bring that up to them in the sense of A, this is the culture, and B, what you do affects other people? How does that actually work for you?
In the hiring process?
Yeah, just because I'm curious. I wouldn't think that you talk about culture after a project is done, right? But that's what a lot of business owners want to do. It's like, yeah, let's talk about culture or our vision after you've been here for a year and you've been struggling. So let's, what point do you talk to them about that? And just, how does that actually work from kind of beginning to an end of, like, say, a project?
Well, I think I think when it comes to hiring somebody, hiring the person, and I'll
This is
say
a good one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. There's probably out there an expert in all things hiring. I'm sure there is. There's careers out of it. And if you're not an expert and it's your career, then, you know, it means that it's a difficult thing to do, right? Finding the perfect fit for the job is probably one of the hardest things to do, in my opinion.
It's the people part of business.
The people part of business is the most difficult. Now, when I hire somebody for a specific role, the first thing I look at is if they're a good person. I don't even care what they're going to do. Right? I look to see if they're a good person. So I look to see if they're, you know, appearances matter, and especially in construction, right? If you show up and
a slob,
if you're a slob, your hair's a mess, and you're not clean cut or whatever, right? That's the first impression that people make. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is, right? You know, construction, especially in the remodeling industry, is very customer service focused, right? Like, we are there for the customer. We will do everything for the customer. So finding the person who fits that, right? Finding the clean-cut guy or girl who is very outgoing, very organized, very understanding of people's needs and wants and wishes. Finding the customer service-focused person is like my main go-to. And then they go ahead and have to have like good morals and a good head on their shoulder. Understanding it's like, I'm not here just for the money. I don't give a crap about the money. The money, you know, there's jobs we win on and there's jobs we lose on, right? That's just nature of the beast. We learn from the jobs we lose on. We also learn from the jobs we win on. And having the person that we're looking for to hire understand that, like, it's okay to lose. It's okay. It happens. I don't want to lose every time because that makes an unsuccessful business. But
you're just playing the numbers. Like, you can't get them all, but it's just accepting that and moving on.
And it's okay to lose, right? And that's a huge thing. It's okay to make a mistake, as long as we learn from it and we try not to make that same mistake twice. So finding the person in that regard, a good person who has a good moral head on their shoulders, understands ethics, finding that person. And then I try to find how that person can facilitate a need in my business, right? So there's been a time, this year, we hired a guy this March, or May, one of those two. Starts with an M.
Yeah.
one of those two. And we had a need, right? We had someone to help me on the back end of things because I'm busy. So someone to help me on the back end. And the need was essentially, I need this person to sit in the office with me day in and day out, 40 hours a week, to help me get these projects on the pre-construction side of things done. Well, it wasn't until maybe about 2-3 months in that I realized that this wasn't the perfect fit for him. Right? In terms of, like, he's not the sit at the computer all day kind of guy.
Yeah.
Right? So then I still want to keep this good person employed, and I want to keep this good person hireable, and I want him within our team because he checks all the boxes in terms of a perfect person. You know what I mean? So then I just pivoted and I put him in a position that suits him perfectly. And ever since I did that, he has thrived. Right? I've done that twice with 2 different people on our team. It's like I tried one thing with them where filling this hole or this need that we had. And just because they were a good person, I wanted to keep them. So instead of letting them go and trying to find that perfect person again, I was able to end up keeping him and filling him in another position that we needed. Wasn't necessarily priority number 1, but at least I kept a perfect person in the company and keeping that morale up. And that's the same thing with subcontractors. If you're not a good person, I don't care how good your work is. You're not working with us.
That's such a valuable point because there's 2 things that you demonstrated. One is a level of awareness that, like, this is a person that because if we're talking about like ethics and, you know, high moral value, it's like I can always teach this person to do a job a little bit better, but it's hard to teach ethics and morals. Like, don't steal from me, do the job right. Like, if you have to teach that to somebody, it's difficult to do. So
teaching care,
teaching care, 100%, and being able to take that person and having the awareness of, like, hey, this is low key soul sucking for this person. Let's move them. And they just thrive. It's like, cool. Well, now they plugged a hole in a different area of the business and they're thriving. And that's, I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs may not even have that. But I want to pivot into another place, kind of still on this track, where you are keeping an eye on what's the right employee for Vegas Remodels. What are things that people can do to find the right contractor?
So,
because they're not all created equal.
No, correct. Every person's different, right?
Like if I was gonna go out and like, hey man, I'm gonna do ground up construction or reno or whatever, and I'm over in Wisconsin, and you're like, hey man, look for this, and this. Make sure they check off these boxes, and you might have someone that's like they're solid.
Yeah. So I'll say this. I don't know if there's a bleeds a little line here. Here comes that question. I don't think there's a. I'll say what works for me.
Okay.
I'll say what people have given me compliments on
For sure.
compared to others that they've dealt with in the past. We'll go that route. So my company's success has been primarily based upon a few things. One, I show up when I say I'm going to show up, right? So, and that can bleed into the bigger overarching thing, which is doing what you say you're going to do, right? If you tell the client I'm going to be there 8 a.m. on Monday, then you show up at 8 a.m. Monday. If for whatever reason there's a delay, communicate that, right? Understanding that people's time is important.
You'll never get it back. Yeah.
Yeah, do not take advantage of that. So we try our hardest to be overly communicative. We try our hardest to communicate strengths of the job, weaknesses on the job. We try to communicate with our designers like, hey, we need this, hey, we need that. Sometimes we're not the best at it, and I'll say that all day long, right? We're not perfect in any regards, but
it's what you strive for. It's what
we
constant
try to
communication.
Like there's only certain things that you can control on job sites. Remember that, especially in this industry, is you can control your communication and you can control the cleanliness of the job. Those are the literal only two things you can control. Sometimes you can control other people's schedules, sometimes, but if they get in a car accident or they get a speeding ticket or something happens or the client has to go to the doctor, whatever, you can't control that. But you can control communication and you can control cleanliness. So those are the two things that we try to target and control as much as physically possible. We try to perfect those two. And more or less, that's really what a lot of our successes come from, right? When people call me, I answer. And if I can't answer, I call them back. If people email me, I email them back. And I'm relatively quick at it. I usually am within 24 to 48 hours. Lately, it's been a little bit longer.
It's so crazy, man. I'll just say this, like some of the most, the busiest, most successful, wealthiest people I know actually are really good at their communication. They don't take like 5 days to get back at you.
Yeah.
Those are like mid-level people.
Yeah.
It's the ones that like they have a ton of things to do that they're really good at their comms.
Yeah, I mean, finding that like that in a construction company, because again, the last thing you want to do is, as a client, you want to bring up, let's just say a Monday, you want to bring up to your project manager that there's this certain issue, and then the project manager gets back to you Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, right? That's terrible.
Yeah.
Right, because then the problem's already been skated over for 2 days, and problems probably even gotten bigger by that point.
Yeah.
So we we kind of keep that communication line as much as physically possible. So yeah, going back to like what separates us really is we try to keep our job sites clean. We try to keep our communication not just to the client, but to our guys. So like from the upper management level down to the lower management or even to the laborers in the field, we try to keep our communication as open as possible so that if they need something, we're there to handle it. We try to keep the communication between the clients and us 100% open, so when they need something, we're there to handle it. And then more importantly, and this is where it comes into the subcontractors, we keep our communication open to them too. So our subcontractors know, right? And not all of them. They're getting a lot better than they were.
Good.
But yeah, they understand that the communication is key for us. If you can't be there at a certain job, at a certain day and certain time when we have scheduled you there, then I need to know that because you're going to affect the next guy after you, right?
It's such a trickle effect.
It is, right?
Sure.
You've just effectively ruined the whole schedule. So I need you to more or less communicate to me.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Way to go, Bill.
Yeah, way to go, buddy.
So I think communication and cleanliness and just staying on top of it is really what kind of makes for a good contractor. On top of that, for a client to look out for, so communication is key. So find the guy who communicates to you and will take the time out of his day, even though he's not going to get the job, right? Even though he may not get the job. And there's been clients I've stayed on the phone with for an hour, and I said, look, I do not have time for your job, but call me if you need some help. Like, call me if you need me to give you advice or whatever. I'm here. That's part of my job. But I always look out for contractors who, and sometimes I fault on this, so this is my fault, but who try to overcommit to too many things, and I'm working on that this year. But for example, I never would trust a contractor who is readily available within 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially-
I get that, but elaborate on that a little.
So if there is so much work going on right now in the Valley, everybody is getting their remodel done. Everybody's doing new builds. Everybody's doing something with a contractor. If the guy that you call is like, yeah, I can start tomorrow, that says something.
A little bit of a yellow, orange flag.
Yeah, not necessarily a red flag.
Right.
That means that you might have just called at the perfect window of time. Somebody else might have backed out, and now you're filled in. But it would be something I would worry about, because I'm usually about 2 months to 3 months out.
Mm-hmm.
And most people in my industry are usually about 2 to 3 months out, of the people that I know, including the best of Las Vegas people.
Mm-hmm.
The people that were like bronze, gold, silver, or even some of the not aforementioned, the competitor, the direct competitors in this field. I know that they're pretty booked out as well. So yeah, I would look at timing, and I'd look at their communication.
So good.
So I feel like, and again, you're just dropping some major dimes here. But it's like, no, I mean, when we look at business, a lot of people want to try to figure out, like, what's the code to being really successful, right? And they think it's this complicated stuff. But you mentioned some real interesting things, just follow up, being efficient with your, doing it in an efficient manner. Yeah, I mean, like, versus the business that calls you back in 5 days. And even just internal communication for, so for your employees out there, even just being able to talk to colleagues and get back to them in a timely fashion. So if somebody sending you an email and not waiting 48 hours, especially when you're not working at Google, it's like a 20-person department or something like that. So you mentioned some real good things there, but I want to go backwards a little bit and kind of dive into, this is where you're at now, but what about some of the challenges you face when you're trying to grow and scale your business? Like, I think you mentioned you were good for about the first 2 years, 2.5 years that you started up. What were some of the challenges you started facing at that point? And then how did you actually start overcoming those challenges?
Well, first,
Drugs.
lots and lots.
Lots of
no
meth.
Yeah, dude.
Because it's not an easy industry. I think most people don't know this, but especially in construction, like it's very labor intensive. There's a lot of accidents that happen. There's a lot of drinking that happens. There's a lot of like issues, and it's not like it's a very different thing running high level construction versus maybe another industry. So it's very different. Yeah.
Yeah, this industry beats you quite a bit, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, most people get off and go grab a beer, right? Because they just worked 12 hours. And, some clients' houses don't have air conditioning, but
you turn it off to save.
Sometimes, if it's a dusty day, we turn it off so that the dust doesn't go up into their air conditioning and ruin that unit. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things to take into effect. But when I was in college and we went to business school, and you learn a bunch of stuff there, and you listen to podcasts and you listen to books and you talk to people and all that stuff. That knowledge is great, and if you don't continue that knowledge, such as this podcast, for example, if you don't continuously listen to stuff like this, you're going to hit your break-even point, right, of knowledge. And about the 2.5 years is where I did, right? So I was an accounting major, so for the first 2.5 years, I did all my own books, right? So I was really good at spreadsheets, so I did all my own spreadsheets. I did all my own accounting. I did all my own books. And working at Apple, I learned understanding people and their needs, and because it was all over the phone, right? So I understood the personable aspect of the job. So all of those things kind of helped me up into that 2.5 year mark. And then right at that 2.5 year mark, we were getting more clients that wanted to work with us, and it was all by word of mouth, right? I did an excellent job at their friend's house, their cousin's house, their whatever house, their pastor's house, right? I got that once. And they want to work with us. And I would just realize, like, okay, I can't do it, right? Like, there's just not enough time. Like, I can't be in the field working, I can't be in the office working, and I can't do both and then make my wife happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, something's got to give. So then I just started looking for good people, right? I started looking for somebody to take over the project, right? So I hired my first project manager, which was a friend of mine from a previous company that was, he was ready for the next thing. He was an electrician, and he was a project manager for the electrical company, and he wanted the next thing. So I got him onboarded, and a couple years later, it ended up not working out with him, but that's okay, But yeah, figuring out that like, okay, what's the one person that'll save me the most time, and then finding the good people, like I said, right? What are my needs, and then find good people and fill those needs. And that's kind of what I did. So I figured out, I needed a project manager, and then I figured out I needed a site superintendent to back up the project manager, and then I figured out that I needed more laborers to help the superintendent and the project manager. At the end of the day, I mean, I'm even still figuring it out, and I think that's a key thing to learn for all entrepreneurs is nobody has it figured out. I heard a quote one time that is ring true to this day. It's every business is failing. Those who plug the holes faster survive.
I think that was me, man.
Was that you?
Maybe it was not.
So, I was gonna say, dude, whoever told
It was
me
me
that,
or Yoda. It was one of those two. Yeah.
Yoda might have said paraphrased, but But yeah. So like now I need a marketing person, right? So now I got to find a marketing person who fits my core values and my understanding of how I want to run things, and it's just constantly trying to figure out what your needs are and kind of getting that next person to that level.
Dude, that's really good. So there's a couple of words that you keep saying over and over, which is like, ethical, moral, good. I've worked with your team and talk a little bit about the importance of not only working in the community, but also giving to the community. I know Vegas Remodels does a lot of charity work. You've done some really awesome stuff. Like, how does that fit in when you're talking to, your team as far as like the vision of a project, but also in us being successful, we're able to help the good people that are, maybe hurting in our community, and we can help them in other ways, doing like 5K runs, a bunch of other stuff, right? Talk a little bit about that and how that's important with businesses in general and also yours.
Being a Vegas-born company, one, we're kind of like unicorns from what I hear, right? People are not from here, usually. People from here leave here, and people that live here are not from here. So being a Vegas-born native is a very rare thing. But I take a lot of pride in that, right? So not only do we have a Vegas-born company, some of our people are actually Vegas-born inside of it, right? We have a couple of Vegas-born people that we hire and employ, but we take a lot of pride in our city, right? That's one of the reasons that we started this company, is to kind of change it, right? Change the negative stigmatism on contractors as not following up and taking advantage of people. I don't want people to be taking advantage of my city. This is my city.
Right.
Don't do that. So
it's like talking to Batman right now.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. I'm taking it into my own hands. I'm gonna put on my black helmet and I'm gonna go fight some crime, dude. But no, like this is my city. So not only, and I don't need the house on the hill, right? I don't need the castle on the hill. I don't need the megaplex, whatever, with a movie theater in it, with a bowling alley. I don't need that. All I want is to make enough money to have a good life with me and my wife and, our future family, my guys to be having a good enough life for their families. And then I want to take care of the rest of the people with the extra money that we do have. So we sign up for, we donate to the churches and we give back to the churches and we give back to the communities. And that really shows that, like, we're the contractors who care, really. Like, I care not only about you and your home and your future memories that you're going to make in this home, but I also care about the other people that I'm not directly working with, right? I mean, there's probably, I can't even count how many people we've probably helped at the church, right? The church programs and, the foundations that some of our clients host,
little sports teams like Little League, right? Is that something?
Yeah, we do like Little League baseballs, right? Like, so underprivileged Little League baseball teams and basketball teams and those sporting events. We dress these kids up to the nine, because if you look good, you feel good, you play good.
And you start dunking on each other.
Dude, like make those
breaking ankles.
Yeah, dude. A couple like Steph Curry's are coming out, dude.
Yeah.
Like, and whether or not these kids remember me is nothing. I don't care, right? I don't care about them remembering me, but I just want every single person in this city to thrive. I really do. I truly do. And that's why we try to give back as much as we possibly can. And the cool part is my team knows that that's part of our vision, right? We allocate, we talk. Going back to the culture of the company is, I'm probably, and this could be a bad thing, you guys tell me, there's probably books on this. Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But
don't disclose this right now.
I overly communicate. Right, I communicate what our jobs upcoming for the year look like, where we're slacking, where we're over budget, where we're under budget, what the end net profit of the year look like, what our taxes look like. We have Tuesday morning meetings where every Tuesday we talk about everything. And some of it's banter, right, which is good. It's good to see the team and just joke around for a couple minutes and have a good time. But some of it's actually quite important, and we go through it and we talk about like, hey, we're doing this charity, we're doing this stuff, and
this is who it impacts, and so on and so forth.
I mean, just giving back to those small things makes such a huge impact, and the team is rallied behind it. We know that. I mean, I'll do one other thing. Say one last part about it is, we did this really cool restaurant job that had no money. Right, we'll say that right off the top. It's a $250,000 rebuild, and they had $100,000 to do it. So we worked with the accountants and we worked with their finance people to build this restaurant, and it was for serving underprivileged people in the valley. Like, it was a restaurant to give them jobs and to give them food, and it was kind of like a nonprofit business. And we ended up eating a lot on it just to make it happen, but it was a good thing. And we all talked about it. We made sure the numbers work. Like, we're not going to take a $150,000 hit unless we have to. And yeah, we ended up making really good stuff out of that. And because of that, we got introduced to wealth management partners, right? And so if we didn't do this nonprofit job, other opportunities and doors wouldn't have opened for us. And it wasn't even because of that. It just so happened that you did a good thing, and good things started to happen for us.
It's so funny how that works when you put out good energy, a really good intent. You get great stuff back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say the same thing. It's like you talk to some people like, I need to make $10 million before I can like donate or contribute to the community. But then they're either like, oh, we're a small business community in the community. It's like, no, you're not. And it's like, if I donate money, it's like, do you just do that for taxes, or do you do it because you actually give a shit about the community? And it sounds like you're just doing the opposite, which is you're doing it actually for the good of the community, which I find is very important too when we're talking about business. You hear people say you got to find your passion and your why. Then they don't really know what that actually is. And it definitely sounds like that's kind of what you're discussing there right there.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I got a bigger purpose than us, and this is what we're actually working towards. Just like a side note, I actually wanted to know why is it so important for you to over-communicate to that level to your team?
I think transparency is a good thing, right? And again, I could be totally wrong.
No, there's definitely some businesses that are like on that end of the spectrum in terms of transparency and philosophy. And there's other ones that are different, and there's no right or wrong. It's just like how you run your team. So,
but yeah, I mean,
what's for you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like some people like, don't tell the employees absolutely anything.
I'm killing it.
Yeah,
it's so like, much money.
Yeah, it's
right?
just like, don't tell them anything. Don't tell. Like, I'm like, all right. Like, so I'm most curious to know, like, from your perspective, like, why is it important just for you as an owner and the individual say, this is, I just want to be completely transparent with you guys?
Well, I've worked quite a few jobs, and two of my favorite jobs actually were Apple. I've talked about that already. And I've worked for, not the roofing company when I was 12.
It's like child labor.
That guy,
who are they?
Well, in terms of a contractor who doesn't show up, that's that guy. His whole thing was sticky notes on his windshield, like to the point where he got tickets because he was covering his windshield with.
Oh, fuck!
Like he literally made a cutout of just so he could see straight. Like, it was horrific. I just remember, anyway.
That's old school, dude.
Yeah, I hope he's still good.
Yeah. So, hope he's alive, right?
He didn't crash.
I don't know where he's at, but
I want to try that.
Dude, it was wild. I wish I had pictures. I mean, phones weren't
some
invented.
Polaroids or something.
Like, cell phones with cameras weren't invented then, kids. So the second job I worked for was for a construction company based out of Chico, California, up in Northern California.
Oh, yeah.
And I worked it remotely. And he was very transparent with me, and so was Apple. Apple is actually very transparent as a company to even the lower level people. So when I started, I was like fully aware. And granted, it's a publicly traded company, so most of their finances are public knowledge anyway. But they were transparent all the way through. Like, we knew what new products were coming out. We knew before anybody else did. We knew like what the Apple Store was going to drop, like what times we knew about the conferences. Same with my construction guy, is we were very transparent to talk about the numbers and understanding, and that really kind of helped me understand the importance of the whole business's goals, right? Because I feel like if you're in the dark and as an employee, you just have these perceptions in your head that the company's doing exceptional, right? You're just like, you see the boss driving a new truck, the other managers driving brand new trucks, we get new trailers and equipment and new tools, and you just assume that like everything's hunky-dory, right? And so there could be a perception there, but in reality, if you keep that transparency open and just say, hey guys, like last year we spent $39,000 on fuel. I actually do not know if that's the correct number. Probably pretty damn close, but we spent $39,000 on fuel. I want to start shopping these places. Like, when you have the opportunity, don't go out of your way, but if in the mornings, if you could swing by a Costco, save yourself an extra 15 cents per gallon. That'll save the company's overhead by this much money overall. and we talk about, I think transparency is very important. And at some point, it may not be, and I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, but I'll say this, ever since I've been transparent, my guys are happy. The company's been thriving. The guys understand what it takes to make business happen. They understand the cost implicated for one mistake, right? If you drop a $500 toilet, it doesn't just cost $500 because now you've delayed the plumber, and then you got to go to Home Depot, then you got to go get the toilet, and you got to ship it, and then you got to come back and you got to unbox it, and you got to throw it away, blah, 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 right? So a $500 toilet's more like an $800 mistake. And so they understand all of that.
Just to kind of expand on that a little bit further, because before we started earlier today, we were talking about the open communication, communicating effectively, communicating consistently, and frequently is that. But also when you mentioned subcontractors, and in a place like Vegas, you mentioned like the well of people isn't incredibly deep compared to like maybe other markets.
Yes.
So you very well may have of that very same subcontractor working with multiple people.
I know that for a fact.
For a fact, right? And so talk a little bit about like there's the Vegas Remodel Ryan Cave way of like high communication, accountability, cleanliness, all that stuff, and squeezing talent and production out of them doing it this way versus maybe someone else. I don't know if that kind of makes sense.
No, it does. So it's actually easier than it sounds. The well isn't big, like I said. I mean, there's probably 1,000 contractors in the valley, right? And of those 1,000, I'd say half of them can do the quality that we're asking for. And of those half, less than half of those are people that we'd pull from because of their communication and their overall people. And then, they may only have a one-man team, right? And like a one-man team can't do a 20,000 square foot house by himself, right? It's going to take him 7 months. We don't have that time. So getting them aligned onto the core values of the company and what we're trying to accomplish is actually not that difficult. I actually invite the subcontractors to these
like site meetings and things like that.
Well, yeah, they always come. So we walk the job first. We run through the scope of work so they have a full understanding of what I want, how I want it, and what they're going to be doing on the job. So that's number one. Number two is I'm a huge advocate of not having me dictate your price, right? Your price is your price. So I know that there's other contractors that'll bid the job and then force the subcontractor to come down to that price. Or it's like, hey, I only have $1,000 in it. You have to do it for that. Whereas it's really an $1,100 job. But you bid it wrong, and now you're forcing somebody else to take care of it because of you, right? And that's not fair. So I'm a huge advocate of like letting them bid the job, and if it works out from a numbers perspective, then it does, right? If it doesn't, then we rework it together. I do not dictate their price, ever. I also do not dictate their schedule. I talked to them and I said, hey, I'm always a couple months ahead of time, right? When it starts a job, I do not dictate their schedule. Now there's times where I'll book them out and I'll schedule them on a job and, maybe they got a couple other things going. And then, that's where the schedules kind of overlap. And then I start to have to dictate their schedule, but I try my hardest not to. I'm like, hey, can you be here next Wednesday? And they're like, no, I can be there Thursday. And we're like, perfect, that works. Right. And then, now I just expect them to show up on Thursday when they say they do. So letting them kind of run their own company and me kind of working around the way that they run their company has really helped.
I would imagine your relationships are that much better that when
100%.
you, like if you were to call them out like, hey, I have a job, they'd rather work with you than maybe
100%,
someone else.
100%. But the other thing is I've heard this from a number of people is every year we throw a company Christmas party just to celebrate the subcontractors. Right? So we celebrate just the subcontractors. Clients aren't invited. Some friends and family are invited, but I invite all of their team. Right? I said, look, it's not just the owners of the company that come. It's all the guys who actually put their hands on the job. And if they want to bring them, they can, but everyone's invited. Everyone who helps this company accomplish that goal is invited so that they know that we care, but I also invite them to charity events. I invite them to, I invited them to the church thing. The electrician invited me to his what is it called, a trunk or treat thing, and we showed up. Right? So they care about charity just as much as we do, and we show up to their events, they show up to ours. And so those are the kinds of cool relationships I like to build, the people that have the same concept for this city that I do, and we all try to make a difference. And having me show up means the world to them, and so I do it. I try to figure out whatever I can do in my schedule to show up. But on top of that, I mean, I invite them to personal things, right? I'll invite them to whatever we're doing at the office, come by, say hi, whatever. But they'll invite me to their 4th of July parties. They'll invite me to their kids' birthday parties, their baby showers, because we have that good of a relationship. And I always make it a point to show up. And if I can't show up, I make it a point to let them communicate, like, hey, I can't make it because of this, this, and this. But thank you, and I'll give them a gift or whatever.
That's good. So, you know, as you're looking at this, and it's definitely a people, right? Business is people. But I love it, and this is like definitely what you're doing. But I love when owners, they kind of, you know, look at employees like, I want you guys to treat this like it's your company, and then, you know, you're talking like, do I over communicate? But then they don't communicate at all. It's like, I want you to run this like you're an entrepreneur and this is your business, and then they micromanage the shit out of them. Don't tell them anything, and don't communicate much to them at all. And then it's like, why don't they treat this business like it's theirs? And to your point, like, am I over communicating? I think you're seeing the fruits of that, right? You got guys that you're, like you said, hanging out with, going to social events. And I think just my last thing for you, I think, would be just, what is the overall importance of not just, you know, being grateful and appreciative of the people that you're working with, but just how to actually, what kind of behaviors do you as an owner want to, you know, if you could talk to other owners out there, say, I'd like to see you do this on a consistent basis with your employees, that would actually help your business grow that much more.
The biggest thing in my business, and I'm sure every business, I can't really speak on other businesses because this is my only one, but if I had to guess, it's the people are everything. The people who are inside of, the people who are inside of your business are everything, right? So making a point to getting to know them is my biggest priority. So we have, like I said, we have team meetings once a week, but let's just call it an hour, right? Half that team meeting is, you know, the first 30 minutes is actually important stuff, right? It's like, hey, what problems are we facing on job sites that us as a collective team can go ahead and talk about? What are you guys needing from me? Do you guys need me to update any scopes of work? Do you guys need me to give you more iPads? Do you need anything else in the field? And I'm always, always, always down to hear the mistakes, and that's a huge thing. They will make mistakes. It happens, especially in construction. Shit happens. So
yeah.
Edit that out. You know what I mean? But it happens. And understanding that mistakes happen and they're human is a good thing. And then just helping them learn from that mistake so it doesn't happen again is huge. But bringing that open dialogue in the team meetings is huge. But then understanding them on the personal level, we have one-on-ones that we schedule. And sometimes it's two-on-ones if the other guy, Brian, can make it. But we have one-on-ones, and we talk about how they're doing in the company. Like, how is their performance doing? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Doing like a SWOT analysis, right? Really. But then at the end of that meeting is my favorite part. It's their goals, not company goals, their personal goals. And my job is to help them get to their personal goals.
So it could be like, I'm trying to move out, trying to buy a house, trying to get a car.
And some of it is. I mean, one of our guys, bless his heart, dude. He wants to buy his mom a house because she fosters kids. So he wants to buy his mom. Dude, I know. Like, I'm literally going to probably. So, like, one of my guys, he literally said, my mom fosters kids and she has a 3-bedroom house. She really needs a 5-bedroom to foster more kids. Wow. And so I'm like, shit, dude, how do I help this guy get to that level? And so now I'm like constantly thinking and working on ways to help him get to that level. But some of them are simple, right? It's paying off debt. Some of them are going to Disneyland. Some of them are buying a house. So it doesn't matter what it is. Some of them don't even involve money. Like, for example, one of my guys just wants to learn more construction stuff. And I said, perfect. I can help you with that. So I'm setting him up on classes, like to learn on the side. I'm paying for like a Venetian plaster class so he can learn how to do Venetian plaster. I'm teaching him. I'm working on getting him in with the electricians on the side to have him do all the electrical work on the side just so he can learn more. And so not even from like completely outside of the business, I'm helping these guys on a personal level. So, because our goal is when you come in, I want you to be a good person. When you leave, I want you to be an exceptional person. And you could be an exceptional person, and I'm going to try to make you an even more exceptional person by the time you leave. This job is more than likely not a forever job. I hope it is. I wish every entrepreneur probably has this thought in their process in their head that, you know, who's with me today, I want them with me until I die, right? Because you've built this relationship, whatever. The fact of the matter is it's not true. So if I can make these people, if this is a stepping stone to something bigger, let's help them make the biggest step that they possibly can so that the next thing that they do is even better.
Dude, I love that. Man, thanks so much for jumping onto the podcast and sharing wisdom and everything. And for people that are watching this, they want to connect with you, work with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Sorry, I was gonna say my OnlyFans.
Yeah,
My bad.
yeah.
Just reach out.
Super toes at
The biggest way to reach out to me, the best way to reach out to me is going on my website, vegasremodelsllc.com, filling out that contact form, and it'll go right to my website. 24 to 48 hours, I will personally call you. You could also reach out to me on Instagram via messages. That is more like a 3-day lead time for me to get back to you because I don't really know how to use it 100%. But yeah, so I would say the contact form on the website is probably the best way to get a hold of me, and then I will personally give you a call.
So you heard it. So website and Instagram handle. So Ryan, thanks so much for joining us on All Things LOCS.